Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and this is Brooklyn Savvy. Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. We are going to be talking about all things related to the specialized high school test with Horace Davis of the Caribbean American Society of New York and Dr. Yvette Morgan. Now, you are with Team First. So we're delighted to have you because we're really going to be going hard on this particular issue since around 70% of the Black and brown students are part of the public school system, but only 11% are getting into specialized high schools. That's abysmal. We don't like it. We're going to see during this conversation what we might be able to do, what our thoughts are about changing it. But before we get started, let me introduce Colette Ellis and Mickey McCrillis. Thank you, savvy ladies. So anyway, talk to us about specialized high schools. And by that, I mean, talk about the test. What is the test?
Basically, the test is made up of math and ELA.
Right.
It's a 3-hour test.
Right.
And students across the entire city, all 8th graders in their fall semester, has the opportunity to take the test. And this test is the criteria that's used to determine entrance into one of the 8 specialized high schools or testing schools.
So my dilemma is with 70% of the New York City public school children being Black and brown, and only 11% of them getting into these specialized high schools, what is going wrong? Meaning, what's happening? What is driving that?
I think a big part of it is the fact that, and I can go back to when I
But that's too long.
That's not too long.
I'm just teasing.
So there was a point in the 70s, 80s, and 90s where Black and Hispanics occupied more than 50% of the seats in the specialized high schools.
Did you see my mind blow?
Yes. And this was for decades. And this was a time when you had quality education across the city for all communities. And what we find today is that in many communities of our students, the Black and brown students, the Hispanic, Black student population, we don't have the same access to educational resources as we did back then. Back then, you had Special Progress, which was a program, and you had the gifted and talented programs. These programs existing in our community really helped to prepare the students for the exam and to take advantage of the opportunity to get into these schools. For example, I attended Walt Whitman. My 8th grade class was a class of about 25, and I had 4 students from my 8th grade class that took the test, and we went on to Brooklyn Tech.
You had 25 kids in your class.
25 kids.
That's amazing.
And 4 of those kids.
It's about double that now, essentially. Right.
And we're talking about this is in the heart of East Flatbush, Walt Whitman Junior High School. And so I think we have to focus on the root causes of the problem.
Absolutely.
And it's something that we have to, as a community, come together if there's ever going to be an opportunity to solve this problem.
My question, though, is one test being the determining factor of your getting into a specialized high school. Would you comment on that? Because I have issues with one opportunity.
It is anxiety provoking. And also, again, looking at our students through across, rose-colored glasses, what is their socioeconomic? What are their support? What is their preparation for this exam? What has the quality of their education been, not just for this exam, but across? Right. And all of these things are playing a role, and now we're saying to them, okay, here's this exam, now you have to perform. And if you perform, you're going to get in. And if you don't, you don't. Also, I think a lot of parents are not understanding what's going on.
Or the awareness, just awareness.
Right. And myself included as a parent. I didn't know there were a lot of programs the following. You know, my son did not make Brooklyn Stuyvesant at the time, which is where he wanted to go. I'm sorry, Brooklyn Tech. And, you know, it was by a little, and we did not get the option to take the summer program. However, he did get into a gifted program, which was the early college program, that had a more global perspective of evaluating their students. And it gave them a writing sample, it gave them an interview, it gave them their test
Why
score.
can't that be what we see
so
with the
that's my
specialized
point.
high schools?
And this is-
How about you, Dr. Morgan?
Why the exam? Because in all honesty, these schools are extremely rigorous. I strongly believe, yes, there should be other things that we look at, the holistic approach. But there has to be some form of measure to assess students, to determine if they have, and this is not to say that these same students, your child, for prime example, the bottom line is access, preparation, and creating more opportunities like the ones that exist within these schools. That should be the question.
Doesn't research also indicate that a test does not show your
Absolutely.
potential?
I agree 100%. Well, especially coming from a higher ed background where I dealt with test anxiety, with sitting for a GRE, and I had to then advocate for myself to say, I have what it takes to graduate, and that's exactly what I did and earn my PhD.
Absolutely.
But again, who is going to advocate for that child?
Right.
Right?
And that's-
And parents don't know.
Right.
Right?
And interestingly enough, that information is apparently not being disseminated because my story mirrors your son's story. So also not, so it's that sense of, okay, which, you know, was 5 years ago, but but that aspect of, you know, not making it 2 points into Bronx Science High School and then not knowing about the summer program.
That's what happened with my son. 2
Right.
points, Brooklyn Tech, didn't know
So
about a
that's the
discovery
same thing.
program.
So now we have this
Right.
story that
Right.
keeps repeating.
Right. So,
So-
who's finding out about these programs?
Right.
Right.
I think as a community, we have a responsibility to make sure that this information is there.
Right.
You know, I talked about the 4 students from Walt Whitman, but I can tell you that I missed the cutoff score by 2 points. And so I went to the Discovery Program, which was 6 weeks during the summer.
Right.
And that was really instrumental in preparing me
Right.
for what was to come in September when I went to the school. Because on day 1, you're exposed to and you're taking college level courses. And unfortunately, I think what we see in the educational landscape in this city is we have students that are just not being appropriately prepared
Absolutely.
to excel in the rigors of, you know, an institution.
I think it's
like
driven
this.
largely too by our segregated school system. And there's been a lot of research. In fact, last season we talked about the segregated New York City public school system. I know that in my research, I learned that oftentimes some parents in certain communities don't even know about a specialized high school test.
Yeah.
They may not even know about specialized high schools.
Yeah.
You know, so to your point about what we need to do to make sure there is a good school in every single community, can we even make that happen though? Are we too far away from something like that?
Well,
How can
I would
we make it
answer
happen?
that by saying that it existed before, right? And if it existed before, it can exist again. And I think what we have to start to look at is the dynamics of the school system has changed somewhat. Many years ago, you didn't have schools that went from, let's say, 6 to 12.
Right.
And so in those schools, some charter schools and so forth, in trying to maintain their student population who they've worked with, and their quality schools. It's not just these 8 schools that are quality schools.
Right.
So access to information and having those students test to leave those schools, they want them to stay in those schools.
Right.
And so back in the 90s, you really didn't have that situation. Everyone as far as 8th grade. When you left middle school, you were going to graduate and you were going to go to high school. Today, you have middle school and then you go right into high school, and that is the same school. And I can tell you from experience that many of those schools, as far as providing that information and that access, it just is not. And so parents find out after the fact, and even if they find out, the question is, when are they finding out?
Yeah.
When you have students, and I think Dr. Morgan can speak to this about early preparation, that are finding out about, even in 7th grade, that in a few months, they're going to be taking this test.
You already lost time.
Yeah, and some
It's too late,
folks,
and it's too late for a whole bunch of kids right now.
and but there's a false narrative also, right? One of the other issues is you have parents who have students that are doing quite well. And so they assume taking the test is not an issue. My child is a 95 student, and this is going to be a cakewalk. He's done great on all the tests, his teachers and everything. But when you have 28,000 students competing for 5,000 offers, it's a competition. And so that's what we, I think, have to start to look at. And I think it's for the Board of Ed to ensure that as we prepare these children for these opportunities, they have a seat to land. If we do the job that we're supposed to do as a community, as the Board of Ed, and now we have students that are ready for, these opportunities. STEM education is where it's at. I talk to communities all around and I say to them, I want our kids to have college degrees and be successful, but the question is, where do they go after college? We want them to have careers that are focused on where the jobs of the future is going to be.
And I think STEAM and STEM, because of course we're going to need our creatives.
Absolutely,
We always need our
absolutely.
creatives. But I guess I want to circle back to the test, which is, why not the mayor's plan that talked about using the ELA and math scores to be able to determine what kids get into these specialized high school? What is wrong with that? Yvette.
That would make sense if the specialized high school test was aligned to those statewide exams.
And why is it not?
You're looking at a situation where, as I said, these schools were created to emphasize and push science, technology, engineering, mathematics. On day one, when you go in and you're taking advanced level courses.
Stuyvesant as well is a school that pushes that as well? I thought Stuyvesant.
Absolutely, Stuyvesant.
Okay, all right.
The
all right,
main
that was
three,
my comment.
because there are
Right.
8 schools now.
Okay, right.
But the main three
right.
started out Brooklyn Tech,
Right,
Bronx
right,
High School
cool,
of Science,
okay,
and Stuyvesant.
right,
There is a significant concentration in these
right, those areas.
My issue is, if you were to look at the mayor's plan, in the first year, it's 3% of the students across the city. Second year, it's 5%. And then in the third year, it's 7%. The issue is, we still have not solved the fundamental and root causes of our children not getting the quality education.
And there's
that they should
two
have.
of those, because we're looking at not getting the quality education, we're also looking at equity issues. My tax dollars are going to fund these schools, and then yet I don't see students that look like my kids in
Right.
I don't like that.
I think it's
fundamentally.
interesting, when does the conversation become not about, the students not getting in, but about what's the level of preparation from the students, from the districts from which they came, or the schools from which they came?
And that's why the doctor is here to talk to us about
And one
that.
of the things, this is